Hey everybody, who's with me? Welcome to daily morning meditations with Ken. Meditating meaning being still, increasing our perception through training mind, brain, understanding some concepts about embryology, about how we're built. And this is predicated on the idea, the truth, that we are created beings, that we're not some fantastic mistake that came out of, well, who knows where, a big bang or something, but that we were created. And mankind was created in a special way that separated us from all the other animals, so we don't see ourselves as animals. We're going to be classified in a certain way. Embryologically speaking, behaviorally, and other things, we're much different. So in these morning meditations, I'd like to briefly talk about certain things that would help us sort of guide our way into perceptions that we don't ordinarily have in this time. And the reason why I'm doing this sort of on a daily basis now is because many of you perhaps have more time than you have. And if you don't have time to see the live feed and you or you want somebody else to see it, send me your email or their email and I'll send the recording out afterward. So it struck me this morning when I woke up because I had no idea the sort of format that we wanted to do today, and there's something specific I have in mind, but this sort of took precedence, that there's different kinds of knowledge. It's 10 o'clock, so there's different kind of knowledge that we have. So I brought out a couple of books. If you want to know as a therapist, maybe not so much as a person because we think other people should know that, but we should know too. But if you want to know about your body, what's in your body and how your body works, you might get a big book like this, Anatomy and Physiology. And so as you open this book and you start reading about anatomy and physiology, you'll realize you don't know a lot of the terms. So then you need another book like a dictionary to understand terms like anterior means to the front, posterior to the back, because it's a different language. And this language developed over hundreds of years to help science, medicine, understand what's in the body and how it works, because we're curious. But in school, in middle school, grammar school, high school, college even, unless you're in a certain field, you don't really study a lot of this. So we're assuming that the body works, and if something doesn't work, we go to a professional. Professional understands how it's built and how it works, and they advise us, and we take their advice. Okay. Then when you get to science and the professionals, you have a book that one of my favorites by Eric Blechman, on the genetic basis of human anatomy, human anatomy, a biodynamic approach to development from conception to birth. So this is not a science book as much as it is a description of how the body is built from the perspective of a man, an embryologist that called himself a human embryologist, separating himself from an animal embryologist. So up till Blechman came along, most studies in embryology were done on animals. They'd kill them and take them apart and study them. And then Blechman came along and the MRI was invented in the early 70s, and he started doing studies on live human embryos as they were forming. And he came up with information about how we're created and the patterns that are laid down for us. Because we don't build a brain first and then figure out how to do it. We don't do that. There's a pattern. There's multiple patterns that are laid down for us. God says we're, in the Bible, we're knit together in the womb. And that he saw us before we ever came into being. So there's an energy. It's the energy of God that's forming us. And so this attempts to describe some of those patterns. So then we start to see science getting involved. It's not a practicing physician. And then there's a bunch of DVDs by Dr. Brian Freeman, Human Embryology from a Biodynamic Perspective. So now he takes them apart, he takes cadavers apart, and he shows you embryology, shows you what's happening in the neural groove and spinal cord and all of these things. So we're delving in to nuts and bolts of what's really happening in there, and learning that underneath it all, there's energy patterning. There's nothing, and then there's something. And this is from Genesis. At first there was nothing, and then there was something. It came out of the nothing. So our task might be, well, study the something that came out of nothing. But then is there a way to be still enough? The Bible says to hear the still small voice of God. Is there a way to be still enough to hear that still small voice and understand and perceive the patterns, not just the result of the pattern, the end result, but the pattern that's still present today that not only grew you, but repairs you and maintains you throughout life. Those patterns are all still in place. Right? They may be subjugated by the activities of this world. So when people let go of the world somewhat, they can start coming home into the perceptions of these underlying patterns. In our culture, we're very busy. About a month ago, the pastor at my church talked about decelerating. He said, we need to decelerate so we can get closer to God. Decelerate, slow down. So in an effort to slow down, men that were going slow started to ponder. One of my favorite school books in college was Socrates the Start. I was doing very bad in philosophy because I didn't read the books. And the instructor took me aside and said, you could get a really good grade in this class, and I'll guarantee you'll get an A if you read the book. So I read the books, all the books, 1,000-page books. So I did that. And I got an A. So it became aware of the way man that ponder and philosophize, these men view the world and in different ways. So this is now not the nuts and bolts, it's the mind. The mind is contemplating the things of this world and beyond. In our biodynamic view, God made the mind above and beyond the brain as a mechanical device. God made the mind to be able to move inside and perceive the self, so self-awareness. God made the mind to be able to perceive the self in relationship to other people, important thing for humans, and the environment. And God made the mind able to perceive of Him, infinity, all things. So our task is, how could we get to a place where we could perceive with our mind ourself, our relationships with others, and our relationship with God? How do we do that? So the most important book to do that is called the Bible. That's an important book. It's the truth that if you take the Bible, which I left mine at home. I have like 4 of them, and I left them all when I ran out this morning. If you take the Bible and you open that up and just read it, you'll get an A. You just have to read it. And it's called the living word because you don't just read it. When you start to read it, you might feel it. So it lives. It creates change in you. So when I read other books, they also were able to make me think and make me feel. You read a good book, it's a tearjerker, makes you feel. It touches us in certain ways. The Bible touches us in those ways and gives us a foundation for all the other books, basically. Okay. So I wonder sometimes, as I was pondering this morning, if we're getting away from a heart-centered culture and we're going into a brain-centered culture. The brain wants to be in control. From the very inception of the brain, embryologically, the brain is growing exponentially faster than anything else. It's called the nutrient sink of the brain by Schmidt. It's taking 90% of all your nutrients to build the brain. The rest of you gets the 10% left over. The heart is already beating. The heart is built. The heart is a slow, steady rhythm. The brain would grow out of your head if it wasn't regulated somehow. So the brain and the functions of the brain have always been regulated by the heart. In a way, in a long time ago, when I grew up, it was like you knew what to do because it was either right or wrong. And now there's shades of gray in that, and opinions. But in the end, the heart regulates the brain. Heart regulates the brain. Have we moved away from a heart-centered society and world in our approach, in our dialogues, in our governance? We moved away from that and moved into a brain-centered approach. We're going to figure this out. We're strong, like the folks in Babel. And they built that tower because they wanted to show how good they were. And it was taken down, and that's what spread everybody out and changed all the languages. Because one people will get so strong, they'll think they can do it all themselves and not rely on other than the self and each other and God. So I want to be clear about this, and I hope I'm being clear, that when we attempt to perceive the self, the relationships with others and how we're integrated with those, and perceive God, there's ways to do that. And I showed you some books, and I told you about the Bible because that's one of the books. That's the book that takes you into spiritual relationship. So mind, body, spirit. When I talk about moving through zones of attention, it's an exercise. And that exercise is to help train you to do what God intended you to be able to do with your brain, body including brain, mind, and spirit. That's what it is. If it sounds different to some people, I'm trying to clarify. We're not clearing the mind to let it be open to anything that wants to come in. We're accessing God-given tools. It's in the patterning of the embryo. So have we moved away from heart-centered culture and world and gone into brain-centered? If you look at the library or the bookstore with this section on self-help, how I can be this and I can be that and I can do better, I can be rich. It's all about a whole section about how to improve the self. I'm wondering if we're looking for ways to correct the hole in the heart by using this, the brain. It doesn't work that way. So in this series, we'll be doing a lot of heart work over the next couple of weeks. And so just for nuts and bolts, I intend to be on every morning at 10 o'clock. And Zoom has informed me that all of your videos, I might not be able to see all of you for bandwidth, but I'll be able to hear, or you'll be able to ask questions. Your name will pop up but not your image. So there you go. I don't see anybody on today. There might be a problem with this. So if you're not seeing this right now or hearing it, there'll be a recording. That doesn't make sense. Okay. And, God said plagues will come upon the earth. So is this a plague upon the earth? Yes. My goal is to help people understand how to respond. So we can respond from a heart place, or we can respond from a brain place. We can be divisive, or we can be interconnected. So a client of mine last week said, I was working with her and there was a heart issue. The left lateral ventricle, the heart, wasn't performing properly to condition the blood. And so I said that over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do some of my conference calls on heart work. And so the preamble is over, and we're going to do about a 15-minute heart exercise. Help your heart. So if you could get comfortable, close your eyes. And with most of our zone exercises, and this one specifically for heart, we try to find our three-dimensional shape first. It's an exercise to become proprioceptively aware. Proprioception is the ability to feel space around you. Be aware of the space, the way the room touches your skin, the way you're functioning internally. It's proprioceptive input. Inside of you, it's called interoceptive, interior interoceptive awareness. So these are senses that we have that we don't use often. We get used to what we do and forget to look at where we be and what's happening. So when I say go into zone A, that's tune into your interoceptive awareness. When I say go out into the room, it's tune into your proprioceptive awareness. Look these terms up and you'll see that we're not doing anything against scripture or biblical wisdom. We're doing what we're designed to do. Honing those skills. So why? If you're aware of what's happening inside your body and you can see it and you can feel it, you can change it. If you're aware of how you're relating to the room, to the people around you, to the world at large, if you're aware, oh, that's what I'm doing, you can change it. But if you're unaware, it's difficult to change. I'm going to start with this interoceptive or zone A awareness, which is to move inside your skin. And we're going to move into that library of moments I discussed a month or so ago. Because there's moments in time when the heart forms. It's a moment in time when it begins. So here's the way it begins. So follow me in to this moment in time when you attach, called adplantation, to your mother's intrauterine wall. You're a radial being, a sack of cells. There's no organization, growth, no real organization. You started to get some cells in different shapes because of pressure. So ectoblast and endoblast cells. You attach to your mother, and some of the ectoblast cells start to reach in, implant, find something outside the self. They reach out. ectoblast. As they reach out to find connection to mother, the endoblast cells recoil or go back toward away from the wall. And there's a delamination or a split between the two, which opens up a space. That's so important. See the space between the part of you going into your mother and the part of you hanging back, core. The part of you going into the mother, periphery. And then see that open space in between. And see the invitation now for a new type of cell acted upon by pressures, biomechanical actions. A mesoblastic type cell comes flowing into the space. A container forms around the space, the neural canal, called the neural tube. And those first cells that come in to the neural tube are carried in a structure called the primitive streak. That primitive streak carries the precursor cells that are going to form your heart. So what forms the heart? What's necessary to form the heart is the connection to your mother, the connection to the safe other. If it's not safe or there's any kind of problem at all, this is one of the points at which many embryos die. There's not a good enough connection, compatible, cooperative, safe connection. You didn't die, so you did that action that I just described. Your heart cells came in and started to form on around day 8 to 10 after conception. You had about maybe 128 to 200 cells. And that center line, that primitive streak flowing into the middle, becomes your vertical midline. The thing that holds you upright. Dr. Jaap van der Wal from Denmark, a renowned human embryologist in the world, a scientist extraordinaire, says that primitive streak is unexplainable, how it does what it does. So he called it the finger of God. So even some scientists would say that there's unexplainable things that have to be, as far as we know, from the Lord. This primitive streak delivers heart cells. They begin to grow in the middle as a tube within the tube. And that tube, after a few days, falls over itself. So it's a double tube, like bending a hose in half. And then a corrosion field arises that actually degrades and destroys cells between the two halves. And there's an opening and you have a two-chambered heart. The heart begins to fold itself and tip upside down and go through all the mechanisms of form. And by around day 23 after conception, it's beating. And we'll be talking more about this in details at some point, but right now, can you feel your own beating heart in your chest? And is it in your chest? And if you can't feel it, where is it? This is your interoceptive zone A awareness. If you can't feel your own heartbeat, why not? And would you sit still every day, still enough without things on your mind and in your brain to focus on the middle space awareness, because the heart becomes the middle between the periphery and the core. So as you settle now, and you know you made it, you overcame obstacles, your thirst, your desire for life, your growth, tenacious growth toward life, was supported by the patterning and the foundation that brought you into adulthood. Can you please focus your attention away from everything else and put it on the heart? If your heart isn't on the midline in your chest, ask. Don't look for it. Ask for the awareness of your heart, its location, its tone, its shape, to come to you. And come to your awareness right now. So let your mind be free of all other thoughts and considerations, and ask for an awareness of your own heart. And it strikes me now to ask you to go and remember the time when your heart felt whole. As a child, before heart breaks. It might be as an infant, it might be as a newborn, it might be in the womb. But is there a moment in time that you can bring forth from the non-conscious where your heart was whole and in its rightful place? If you could bring that remembrance, that moment in time, into focus from the depths of your non-conscious, you'll see the template that you'll want to reinsert or resynchronize to the heart you have now. The one that's been perhaps broken, protected, walled off because it's too painful. And my clients sometimes ask, why would I want to bring my heart into this equation, into this world, into this strife and stress that I have? And my question is, why wouldn't you want to have the heart involved? It's your regulator. We know this. Without it, we're lost. So some time ago, I was lost. And there was just no way by my own power I could bring myself into a place where I was found. And then the one who made me found me. So perhaps right now, you can get your wholeness back, you can get your joy back, you can get your connection to your own heart back, and the fullness of it. By letting yourself be found in the still, quiet places. take all the things that broke you or seem to have broken you. You could take them beyond your body, beyond this room, and beyond to the great beyond, and give them over to the all that ever was, is, or will be. You can surrender. And when you do, you'll find yourself becoming more still. Feel more complete, more internally regulated. Understanding that we can't do it all ourselves. We couldn't as an embryo, we needed to attach to a mother. Can't as adults, we need to attach to our loved ones. We need to attach to the one who made us. So it's okay to study books like anatomy and physiology. It's okay to study philosophy. It's okay to study science. But underpinning it all, that's book learning. Underpinning it all is experiential learning. Take what you learn and experience it. I experienced a direct connection. Even in this training, I experienced a very direct connection to God. And the interconnectedness of all things was made clear to me. You're not a whole bunch of different divided things. You're one thing. And bringing yourself into wholeness, especially at the heart level, is important for our health and well-being. So take one more look at your heart on the midline in your chest. Heart as center. Notice your own beating heart if you can now. Perhaps focusing on it for a few minutes helps us to observe it. And if you can, if you're frustrated, come in again tomorrow and look for it again. Because I'd like to spend a week trying to help people find their own hearts and help people find their heart for many other things. And we're going to end this here at 10:30, about half an hour each day, 10 a.m. to 10:30. Please email me some feedback about your experience. And have a great day. Be safe out there.